Right. Welcome, Seaweed fans. Today I am talking to Adam Costello of Innovating, who is working very hard on making textiles and t-shirts from seaweed, or at least some with some seaweed base. Adam, welcome. Thank you so much for talking to me today. I guess just to get us started, could you tell us a bit more about what you're doing with Innovating and how this journey began?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I initially came up with the idea for Inlandsea really to try to help to save the plastic pollution crisis. So back in 2017, I just wanted to effectively just set up a business or just create a t-shirt which raised that issue. I was living in Manchester in the city, and I'm a surfer, so I'm really aware of like the litter and pollution in the city at the time, and especially plastic pollution as well. So really in 2017 there'd been a lot of campaigning around plastic pollution, but it wasn't massively in the news or in the media. It was only through like David Attenborough's Blue Planet, like the whole actual program, that where everyone was just like, oh my god, we've got a massive plastic issue. And obviously since then we're now in we've got months like plastic free July that we're now in. So but before all of that, no one really knew. And one of the big things that you can do with plastic and plastic pollution and plastic bottles is you recycle it and make t-shirts out of it. So that's what I did at the very beginning of Inlandsea. I created a t-shirt made out of recycled plastic bottles. I attended a Patagonia event at the time, and I learned where I could actually get this done. And there were, I don't know how many, very minimal independent clothing brands at that time using recycled plastic bottles in t-shirts.
Right.
And so I went ahead and did this, got a company in America, and we got about 500 t-shirts made using a blend of 50% organic cotton and 50% recycled plastic bottles, and 2 different designs. And that kind of kickstarted the business. And I suppose it was a talking point. Again, what I've done with the Seaweed t-shirts is a similar idea. It's mainly a talking point, like the recycled plastic bottles at that time. People were like, I had a market stall in the town where I live now, and people were like, oh my god, I can't believe this t-shirt has recycled plastic bottles. And now everyone's doing it.
What was the fabric like?
Yeah, it's just really quite soft, and it's similar to polyester at the end of the day. It's but it's just not obviously virgin polyester, virgin plastic that's being used. So yeah, so that helped create the story, I suppose, for Inlandsea in terms of trying to solve plastic pollution. And obviously since then there's tons of brands and ethical brands and brands that are trying to help solve the climate crisis that are using recycled plastic bottles. But at the end of the day, all we're doing is, again, using plastic in clothing, which actually is quite bad for your skin. There's toxic elements and carcinogenic elements in polyester and plastic that you're then putting on your skin. But also, we're not actually stopping to use plastic in that way. We're actually keeping the demand up for plastic bottles. So there's got to be more of a solution. And last year, I run a podcast called Things Can Only Get Greater with my partner Vic, and another podcast called the Ethical Pages podcast. But it was through our podcast Things Can Only Get Greater that we learned, we interviewed a gentleman called Alec Watt from Green Ocean Farming, who seemed to know a lot about seaweed. He seemed to be the only person at that time who had any kind of website presence on the internet to do with seaweed in the UK. So we got him last year. Yeah, so that was probably around this time last year, I guess. Okay. It might have even been August last year, so it's obviously relatively soon, relatively recently. But it was during that podcast that Alec told us that you could make seaweed, use seaweed to make clothing. You can make a fiber from seaweed to put into clothing. And so that was kind of obviously the light bulb moment for Inlandsea again, to go about trying to find where I could get t-shirts made using seaweed. So it was actually again through my podcast, the Ethical Pages podcast, that I interviewed a gentleman from Ocean Tea. He I've forgotten his name. I do know his name, just totally forgot his name. So he's an absolutely amazing person. Like he's made an incredible business within the golf industry. Again, he's trying to solve the plastic pollution crisis. He's trying to solve plastic in the golf industry.
For the English watchers, ethical tea is golf tea, is not. Okay, cool.
Exactly. Yeah, I say that to everyone. So a tee, as in when you play golf and you hit the ball off. So they're made out of plastic. So he's invented a tee made out of bamboo. So he's trying to get rid of plastic. So it's kind of like that's a bit of a catalyst product, I suppose. Again, a talking point within the golf industry, so to get people to change their minds about plastic. And then he's also launched an apparel brand with his company. So it was through getting him on my podcast that I learned where I could actually use seaweed in clothing, with the factory that actually did it, and also the material that you could use, because there's not very many companies who have actually successfully made this material. So obviously through that, I found the connection with the factory, and I found the name of the material that needs to be used. And yeah,
is there only one?
There's a couple, maybe a few more coming around, but the one that's been commercially available for quite some time is called Seaweed. So they're a German company. I think they're called Smart Fiber. So you can use Seaweed, their patented material, which contains the seaweed in your t-shirts. So I obviously, at that time, I had all the idea, had all the connections to the factory, but obviously it's being a startup, funding is obviously super difficult. So I went about doing the crowdfunder and used Kickstarter for that in July of this year, and then we successfully raised
July of last year.
over. Say again.
July of last year.
July of last year.
Was it? When was the Kickstarter? Was it 2000?
Sorry, no, January. Did I say July? No, January this year.
Oh, January.
Yeah.
You moved fast, Adam.
Oh man, yeah, it's crazy. Like if I think back all the stuff that's happened in such a short space of time, but so January this year. Sorry, in we did the Kickstarter and raised the funds by March. We got the funds through in March-ish. We raised just over £14,000 to then be able to actually pay for the t-shirts and make the whole idea happen.
How many have you sold?
I don't know. We've got over 200 backers. So I reckon we've sold, I need to look exactly how many we've sold, but we've probably sold around 400 or 500 of the t-shirts, which are all actually on pre-order. So we've got a massive job next week, because the t-shirts arrive finally from Lithuania, and we will be packing them up and sending them out to people. So there's going to be
I can't wait to get mine
next week. yeah. So you hopefully
don't rush on mine. I can wait.
Hopefully in about a week or two you'll actually physically have the t-shirt. But they're absolutely beautiful. I'm wearing one of them now, the samples, and they're really
great,
really nice on your skin.
Is it very soft? Can you describe what it's
like? So it's like a sort of almost silky, sort of quite stretchy feel to it, and light, sort of breathable sort of feel. Definitely feels different to normal t-shirts. It's got organic cotton in as well. I think it's about just under 80% organic cotton, and the rest of it's seaweed. Well, the Seaweed material is actually wood pulp with about 4% seaweed. So it's actually only a very small amount of seaweed. But people ask about that, but the reason that that's the only material that was commercially available. But what I'm trying to do and get across the message is that seaweed can be used in clothing, and we need more people to realize that, and more basically just more businesses and companies and innovative ideas to happen with seaweed, which is what I'm pushing, because it has the massive potential to effectively replace plastic, but we just need more people to do it, and more experimentation and more funding. That's why. So I'm hoping that our t-shirts will create a talking point. It's got seaweed in it, and people will push the demand for seaweed, because it's like, a miracle resource that needs to be used.
I could not agree more with you.
Yeah.
But you're preaching to the choir, of course.
Yeah.
How have people responded to the idea of wearing seaweed? Are they open to it, excited, grossed out?
Yeah, it was funny because during the time of doing the Kickstarter, we had loads of like media attention, and like we had an interview with a BBC radio station, and the DJ was like, "Oh, this sounds awful. It's a T-shirt made out of seaweed," and it's like, we can't, when people say it's got seaweed, and their immediate reaction is it's like this slimy brown stuff, and why on earth would you want to put it on, into a T-shirt? So it's again like we're trying to educate people that how good the seaweed is and how the process of putting the seaweed into the clothing. And the big one that seems to really hit home with people is like the health reasons. If you say that wearing something like polyester on your skin is actually very bad for you, not only is it bad for your skin and your body, but it's also really bad for the environment in terms of using fossil fuels and all the other really nasties that go into it. And it doesn't biodegrade or anything. And it can be recycled, but it'll never effectively go away, that T-shirt made out of polyester. But whereas seaweed is the complete opposite of that. It's really good for your skin. It biodegrades after it's been used. It sequesters absolutely loads of carbon when it actually grows. It doesn't need any water when it grows like cotton. And again, it's not using any fossil fuel in terms of like polyester and plastic does. And yeah, it just literally, it grows so quickly, it can just be replaced on the seaweed farm. So it's just like a win-win-win resource. So yeah.
Do you have a guesstimate or a sense of how much more seaweed content you could make in a material?
Yeah, so the problem that I've learned about having seaweed in clothing is that it can be washed out, because obviously you're washing your clothes over and over and over and over again. I think the seaweed can be washed out. So I think that's the main problem at the moment, is that when they're upping the percentage of the seaweed, it doesn't do well over time. So there's like over 600 different species of seaweed. So I think what's happening, we need to experiment with more of these seaweeds. You mix them with different materials and just see which one will work. I know there's companies like Algae Knits who are doing amazing work at the moment, looking to create a fiber or create like effectively like a yarn, which will contain mainly seaweed. But I think it's from what I've learned, they're struggling with it being strong enough. So it's obviously happening, and it will happen. But yeah, it'll be amazing when we do get to a point where we can actually have like a high percentage of seaweed in the clothing.
Do you know what type of seaweed is in sea cell?
Yeah, it's egg rack, so similar to bladder rack, I think. So it's actually a seaweed that they find that the wild harvest in Iceland. So it's a rack, like an egg rack. It's, I think, bladder rack and egg racks are like the most common.
Yeah, they're everywhere. Just go down to the beach, slap on a piece of seaweed and see how you go. Just kidding. Buy one of Adam's t-shirts. So what's after you've got your massive shipment and you sent them out all to your very excited backers, what's next for you and your seaweed journey?
So we've applied for an innovative smart grant. I always panic when I say the word, I can't say it. A smart grant through the government, which again is, I'm working with like scientists and people who, aquaculture scientists, to try and form a team basically at the moment, to try to investigate what seaweeds we could use to create a fibre. I'm getting a lot of interest from people within like the fashion industry and seaweed farmers, who all want to try and make this happen. So there's a close-knit network that's starting to happen. So what I want to do within Landsea and our business is work with other people, collaborate to try to find and make a fibre that's going to use seaweed. And if we don't, I'm sure that there's going to be other companies like Algae Knit who are going to do it. And if they do, then I'd like to work with someone like Algae Knit to create our next clothing line. At the moment, we need like our business really needs an investor or partners or grants, I suppose, really, to in order to actually create the bigger clothing line. So we're still like a startup stage within the business, but we hope that our plans really are to be the pioneers of using seaweed in clothing, and hopefully, this last year's set that bar really. So
amazing. Are you going to do another Kickstarter fund or crowdfunding, or is it more you're looking for?
Well, we did it like during lockdown, didn't we, in the winter? Mm-hmm. So it was like that was mid-lockdown, and we had 3 kids at home in a small house, homeschooling, like 2 6-year-olds and a teenager. Wow. So it was like insane. I don't know what we were thinking of, like when we did it. So in a way,
with stress.
we kind of got through that. So we could potentially do another Kickstarter, but I don't know. I feel like we've probably been and done that, and we should be moving on to a next stage of potential funding, and either working with someone that kind of can help us in the right way. So maybe not, probably avoid trying to do a crowdfunder again.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, if anyone's watching this and they want to get in touch with Adam and invest in his company, please let us know. I'm sure you'd be very open to it, right?
For sure. Yeah, I'm open to chatting to people for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, you're being very kind to talk to me. I really appreciate that a lot. Okay. Is there anything else about seaweed that excites you? Just making or replacing plastics and stuff, and making textiles from it sounds absolutely amazing. Is there any other area about the magic material?
Yeah, exactly. For me, it's just like, it seems quite endless in terms of what it can actually do. We can use it to replace like food. It has a high percentage of protein, I think, similar or higher than beef. So there's loads of business opportunities, I think, especially in the UK, to start a vegan-based seaweed food company. There doesn't seem to be anyone really doing it. There's Shore seaweed snacks that they're doing in Scotland, and they seem to be doing really well, really tasty, kind of crisp type snack, healthy snack as well. That's the thing, like it's a healthy snack at the end of the day. It'll be really healthy. It can be used like a burger, and it'll be essentially like a really healthy burger. So there's just so like that in itself, like, and plant-based food solutions, seaweed should be being used. Obviously, you've got the whole pharmaceutical game that seaweed is already used for. It's no secret that seaweed's been used for like years, like centuries or whatever, in skincare and pharmaceuticals and things like that. So
I just wanted to say, I missed my opportunity before, but when you were talking about the interview that you did, having someone respond saying that seaweed is gross, which it is on the beach when it's rotting and smelly and slimy or whatever, but it's already all around us. Which I don't think people really appreciate. Like, if you brush your teeth today, there's carrageenan and red seaweed in that. Exactly. A lot of moisturizers and cosmetics, and honestly, I'm very happy to have it in pharmaceuticals and cosmetics, because it's not a chemical.
Totally. Exactly. And there's the whole it's been proven that if you feed a small percentage of seaweed to different types of seaweed, there's a red seaweed that grows in Australia, I think, that they've successfully done this with. I can't remember the name. It's quite, well, I think you might have just said it.
It's a Latin name.
One of the big Latin names. But anyway, they've proven that if you give a small percentage of that to cattle and to sheep, it reduces methane, which is a potent greenhouse gas. So there's that whole scenario. Obviously, we've got absolutely loads of cattle which are being fed, and that they contribute to the climate crisis and global warming, like, massively. So another incredible solution that's there for us to use. There's other, like, obviously carbon sequestration, seaweed farms that are hopefully going to be set up in the UK, which people are pushing for. Just the fact that we can soak up absolutely tons of carbon, that's an industry in itself, probably waiting to happen, and there's no actual real way of proving how much carbon is being soaked up by a certain amount of seaweed at the moment, I don't think, but I think it's round the corner.
There are estimates, but the problem with seaweed is that it breaks down. So there's some amazing companies doing carbon sequestering. One called Running Tide over in the US, and they're literally just growing it and sinking it. and the I think roughly it's per dry ton, it's seaweed sequesters roughly a ton of carbon dioxide, which is amazing. Like that's a massive amount. But the problem is that it's, you know, like trees, but they have a shorter lifespan. Proving that it's, or getting it to a point where it's permanently sequestered is the tricky part. So yeah, it's work in progress, I believe, around the world.
Totally, but it seems to have such a massive potential. I think it's the carbon credits, isn't it? If it can equal carbon credits, where it's onto like a winner, really. So yeah, it's like, yeah, incredible. It just goes on and on and on. Like you can just go, you know, as soon as you get into the seaweed world, it's like I'm so passionate about it now. Like what can be done with it.
Okay, well, if I'm making a request, I want a pair of dungarees made from a seaweed from a seaweed fabric soon, please.
Definitely. Hopefully, you know, like as soon as the fabric becomes more available and we've got a better way of doing it, like we'll be able to, you know, you'll be able to be used in like all types of clothing, not just t-shirts.
Was it easy to get hold of, or is there sort of a shortage of it, of Seasal, or?
No, I think it's relatively easy to get hold of. I think it's just having that knowing where uses it successfully, because I think that it's like actually blending it with the cotton. So you've obviously got the Seasal, which is the material which you couldn't just use on its own. It has to be then blended for the clothing into like organic cotton, or into a cotton really, to actually make the actual t-shirt. So
you might not know the answer to this question, but I haven't ever spun a yarn myself. So I'm just kind of wondering, what form does something like Seasal take? Like, is it like a fiber that breaks up very easily and that's why it needs to be blended with cotton, or sort of how does it?
I think so. I've got the full, I can send you the technical PDF like from Seasal of how they make it, but part of it is like the painted process within there, which obviously they don't really give much away. But from what I've learned is that it's like the seaweed is dried and then dried down to a powder, which is then mixed into the wood pulp, and then I think they would create the yarn from that, and then it's obviously blended with the rest of the textile. So
it's mind-blowing. Although I have to say, like, I find all this stuff mind-blowing, and then you think about how petrol is used and plastic are produced, and you know, the processes involved in those have got to be as complex, if not, you know, more. So they keep bearing that one in mind. Amazing. I think we're just about at time, so it was wonderful to chat to you on a recording. Thank you very much for taking the time. If anyone wants to get in touch with me, or in touch with Adam and invest in Innansea, or even buy a t-shirt, what's the website?
Just inlandsea.co.uk.
innansea.co.uk. I am going to post about my t-shirt when I get it. Very excited. And the website for this blog, in case you're watching it on YouTube, is seaweedgeneration.com. If anyone wants any more information, I'll try and have a look at the comments and reply back to people as well. Thank you so much for letting me record our chat. Hopefully some people have found this interesting or informative.